I used to just hack stuff together, but it kept falling apart. This time, I tried being more methodical. Let's see if this version works. Trying to make a game from scratch. So I need a game engine, but everyone knows trying to make one of those is a complete time-wasting trap. Someone once told me that I should write games, not make game engines. And this is good advice, but I'm writing code for a retro machine, so I can't exactly fire up a modern game engine. I'm going to have to do some of this basic background work. How little code do you really need to make a game engine? Forget Unity, let's strip it down and build one ourselves. Just enough to manage the state of the game, move things around the screen and run some game logic. In this video, I'll show you the bare bones engine in action and break down the core ideas behind it, the game loop and the state machine that makes it all tick. But what's in the core of a game engine anyway? Let's go find out. Alright, so I'm not completely insane. Well, anyway, if you're new here, this is part of an ongoing series where I'm building a game and the engine to run it completely from scratch. I'm targeting a little device called the Agon Light. It's a retro-inspired single-board computer with an EZ80 CPU, kind of like if the BBC Micro had a modern cousin. I'm armed with a C compiler, way too much enthusiasm, and let's be honest, only a vague idea of what I'm actually trying to do. There's some saying I vaguely half remember, that we only tried because we didn't know how hard it'd be, or something like that. I've no idea how difficult this thing is going to be, which kind of doesn't stop me from trying. Lately I've been hitting the same walls over and over again, making the same mistakes, and I'm starting to realise they're not a skill mistake, they're a sort of me organising stuff mistake. I'd make some progress, full of enthusiasm, then I'd find a problem, so I'd start trying to fix the problem, maybe go back a couple of steps to fix something else, and I'd just keep getting stuck in that cycle, and I'd bin it and start all over, claiming it was an iteration and that I'd learnt something important. And the problems were mostly due to my own lack of planning and organisation. So this time, I'm trying something different. Instead of just hacking away at code and trying to hold all the state in my head, I'm putting the engineering back into software engineer. I mean, I went to university for 4 years and got a piece of paper that says I am one, so I should probably use that. I'm going to be a bit more deliberate, bit less chaotic with it. So in the last video, I drew some UML diagrams to plan things out. And now we're actually going to use them to tame all this disorganisation. Will it work, or will I have just found yet another way to look like I know what I'm doing and distract myself? Let's go find out. So in the last video, I very boldly claimed that creating UML diagrams was going to solve all my problems, or at least the ones relating to writing code. Now this all sounds amazing, like I've suddenly discovered some almighty wonderness. So is the adoption of an enterprise-grade planning system going to magically make me a better programmer? So let's start simple and just focus on the core of the engine and make that part work. Can I turn these very nice diagrams into functional code? Because it's one thing merely drawing a program and a diagram in a piece of software that looks nice. It's another thing constructing code that actually works. That's the thing with programming. You can have a fancy design, but at some point you've got to build a working program. This fun all begins with the main loop. In the centre of every game engine is a very short piece of code. Let's go look at the one I'm using. Now this right here is the main reason I really like learning the inner workings of software and hardware systems, because if you dig deep enough you'll find the fundamental processing that's going on. It usually involves a loop and some very, very basic processing. Literally every game you've ever played contains a similar structure to this. Balanced on top of it is everything you experience in the game. Here's what I'm calling the engine core, which makes it sound much more fancy than it really is. There's a main loop that runs everything, and a switch state function, and a draw debug overlay function, and nothing else. I'm storing a pointer to the current game state, and then I've got an array of the actual game states themselves. These states are all the different states, naming things is hard, that the whole game can be in. Are you on the title screen, playing the game, on the game over screen, whatever. Each state is represented by what I'm calling a game state structure. Now this is C, we don't have any classes, we've just got structures with function pointers inside them. Kind of does the same thing. Each state can be initialized, updated, drawn, and then tidied up and shut down before I get rid of it. So everything is contained within a state. Hello, thank you for watching this video. I just want to pop in here and interrupt myself and say thank you, because you either found this thing by accident, maybe the almighty algorithm suggested it, or you're actually a subscriber, which is pretty cool. If you're not a subscriber, consider being one. So yeah, if you like what you see and you want to watch more, thanks, and just keep coming back. I also want to say thanks to my patrons. If you want to support the channel, you know the routine. I've got a Patreon. There's a link in the description. If you don't want to, or you're on a device where you can't click the buttons and stuff, that's fine too. I'm not going to hassle you. Just sit back, enjoy the video, and I'll get back to myself. Hello, welcome back. I just spoke to my camera for 30 seconds and didn't have it recording. Quality place here. Definitely need to subscribe. Anyway, where were we? State machines. So this code makes use of a programming pattern known as a finite state machine. A programming pattern, by the way, is exactly what it sounds like. It's a way to solve a software problem in a kind of predefined way. There's a book of them. The book is kind of famous amongst software engineers. I've ordered a copy off Amazon for really cheap. I think it's an ex-library copy, so I'm hoping it's got some fun notes all over it as well to look at. But anyway, these software design patterns can be adapted for game development, and there is a handy website and book for those as well. And the book and variants of it are like a giant shopping list of ways you can structure code. It's not that there's specific algorithms or code libraries. A pattern is more kind of a higher level thing than that. It's a way to solve a problem. How you implement the solution is your way to do it. Their proper use really is in embedded systems like vending machines, where the machine can be in one of a few different states. Like the vending machines I've used usually wait for you to make a decision, then they display the price. Once you put in sufficient money, they give you the item. It's impossible to get the item without paying. Each one of these behaviours is a different state, and it's handled by a state machine. But we're not making a vending machine, we're making a game engine. But it's got the same kind of idea. So we can apply the state machine pattern to this behaviour. Our game will have a title screen, the game itself, and some sort of game over screen for now. So if you don't know what a state machine is, you might just try to do this by cramming all the code into the main loop, or having a bunch of functions that call out to different bits, and probably a massive if statement or switch statement. And that'll get really sort of unmanageable. The game programming patterns page on this has a really nice example. So let's go look at it. So imagine you're writing a game and your character needs to do basic things like jumping and ducking. So you might have a button to jump and another to duck, and some variables to track which state the player is in. But now you need to deal with weird edge cases that just happen. Like, what happens if you're ducking and you press jump? Or you press jump twice when you're not on the ground and you don't mean to. They've drawn a nice little diagram here of what we really need, so you can only go between ducking and standing, and not from ducking directly to jumping. A state machine lets you separate all this out into different states, and tightly control how you transition between the states. But like it mentions here, there is a catch. It's not magic and it won't fix all the problems. For simple, well-defined states like moving between a menu and its options, or character controls, it's perfect. It's the thing to use. For anything more complex, it becomes really unmanageable. You can accidentally create spaghetti that is even worse than BBC Basic with go-to statements everywhere. It can have states that transition to other states that might need a state machine inside it to control more substates, calling other state machines that call more nested state machines. So use it with care. And in general, to a person who's just discovered what software patterns are, every problem feels like it can be solved by picking another one out of the book or the list off Wikipedia. To a person who just discovered software patterns, every problem feels like it can be solved by picking one out the book, like a shopping list. Do I want to use a state pattern? Do I want to use this singleton thing? What's a factory method? Etc. Okay, you've got to understand what they're all for and when you're supposed to use them. So don't just go ask some random AI thing to suggest one to you and let it give you a bunch of code. The code will be fine because these are well understood techniques that are really well documented, and if you have a code generating AI, it's probably been specifically trained on them. But you won't understand why or how they work. so you won't be able to modify them or do anything but paste it in your code and then ask the AI why it's broken, which is not how we do programming. But if you know why you want one, and you know which one you want, and you understand what you're trying to achieve, you can probably guide some sort of AI code generation thing into generating code that you want. Because that's what they're for. They're not for like vibe coding your entire project and just sitting back whilst it does it. If you know what correct code looks like, but you just can't be bothered typing it all out because it's a rabbit hole you don't want to fall down in the first place, and you haven't got half a day to debug the stuff, then you can ask it to make you a state machine or whatever. Now, if you're an actual game dev, or you're a recovering one, or you write complex code for a living, are patterns something that you actually use? Are they still relevant? Because the book is over 30 years old. Because I kind of fell out the industry in the 2000s, so I'm kind of curious how outdated my knowledge is too. Tell me in the comments. State machines are a bit strange. Let's see how this one works. So I've got an enum of all the states that it knows about. These enum values are used as an index into the array of game states. Each item in the array is a pointer to a game state struct, which holds all the function pointers for that specific state. Here's the title screen state. I put it in a separate C file to keep it distinct from everything else. Not much happens in here at the moment, but you can imagine this is like a mini program all by itself. The cleverish part is that the update function returns an enum value to tell the state machine where to go next. Now back in the main loop, the current state is updated, its return value is used to switch to the next state. If we don't need to switch to the next state, a special remain state is returned, which makes the switch state function quit immediately. Switching states is done in a single function. Some examples of state machines can turn this into an overly complex nightmare. When writing all this code, I've got to bear in mind it's running on an EZ80 CPU, which is a modern recreation of a proper Z80. So it's got slightly more instructions and it's faster and more efficient, but it's still an 8-bit CPU. And it's got 512K of RAM that it can address all in one go, and it's awesome. But still, it's got 512K of RAM. I can't go mad with this thing like I could on a PC that's got 32 gig of RAM. So all that switch state does is checks if we're remaining in the current state and exiting immediately if we are. Otherwise, it does some basic error checking before calling the shutdown function, followed by getting the next state and initializing it. It really is quite simple. There's nothing more to it. Now, I probably shouldn't just quit the entire game if the state machine encounters an error. Better way will be to pass the error up the chain of functions and deal with it properly. But I still don't know what to do if like the fundamental parts of a game engine stop working. Like if you're the player and some bit of the innards of Unity die, does it just pop a box up on the screen? Because either way it's going to have to quit the program. And as a player you wouldn't care because you're not the developer. You'd just hope it didn't lose all your progress. Right now though, this is test code. I intend to make it quit immediately if there's a problem because it makes it more obvious to find the errors. And what does all this code produce? Like this slightly complex but not really complex when you consider the alternative code? Well, I've got a screen that says title screen, and if I press the spacebar it goes to a screen that says game screen, and then if I press the spacebar it goes back to the title screen. I know, right? It's amazing, isn't it? It's like best game ever. It's also amazing how so much can go on behind the scenes with so very little to show for it. If you're a programmer, you understand this fundamentally, don't you? All those hours of planning and thinking and organizing and coding and debugging and arguing with the demons in your brain that tell you that you can't do it no matter how difficult it is and that you should just quit and go do an easier job, leads to seemingly nothing when you try and tell people what you've done all day. Programming is like that, that's just the thing. But I think most constructive, creative activities are like that. However, as far as our game's concerned, this is the hard bit complete for the game loop. Because next time I can now focus on a separate part. So I could make the title screen separately, knowing it won't interfere with anything else. I put it in a separate file deliberately. It could just have lived as like a function at the bottom of the main file, but if I put it in a separate file, it tells me this is separate. I can't start referencing variables that I just sprinkle everywhere. Same with the game logic. It won't accidentally tangle itself up with the core of the game engine. It'll be separate. I can then pull the engine out and reuse it. The idea of it all being distinct and structured is important and intentional. The point of this was to reduce the utter chaos and to also allow me to work on the code without getting lost and confused by my own design. The UML diagrams worked perfectly for this. I did encounter mistakes in them, and I did find parts that didn't work or didn't make sense or I'd forgotten the fine detail of because I made them 3 weeks ago. But I also expected that. And all I had to do at the design stage when I found a broken diagram was slightly modify it, check with my own intelligence of what remains, and see if it seems sensible, and then turn that into code. And it mostly worked the first time. No, it really did nearly work the first time. Like, apart from daft typing mistakes, like missing brackets and semicolons and forgetting how to write a C struct, which is a bit disturbing, or getting tripped up with that chicken egg thing of trying to have a pointer to a C struct inside the same struct as itself, which you can't just type def your way out of, you've just got to write struct everywhere. It just worked. There was no show-stopping design flaws. It really was also nice partitioning designing code from writing code. So join me next time where I implement this mess, the entity management system. We're probably going to have to refactor this, but that's also part of software design. It's gone cold. No. Horrible. But thanks for sticking around right to the end of the video. And since you're here, I'm going to explain a bit more about future videos. You see, I like to switch between different projects to keep things interesting, both for me, but also for you. For the next bunch of videos though, I want to really make some actual progress on this game and its evolving game engine. I'm not just going to lecture on what the code does though. I want to add a bit of computer science to the videos, explain why I'm doing certain things and the thoughts behind it. It's not a tutorial. I don't just want to run through line by line of code. That kind of video, while it can be interesting, after maybe 5 minutes of it, a little bit uninteresting. Also, it'll give me some time to research and plan more DOS related videos, because they're fun. I quite like learning about DOS, so don't worry, I've not stopped those and got bored and switched to something else. It's just I need to actually sit down and learn things now. All the easy stuff I've just figured out and Googled and worked out. But now I want to actually do something more complicated. Because all the poking around with a printer port has made me want to properly dive into the inner workings of the PC. I need to get a book. Some of you may know this book, or there's another version that's got some cartoon guy looking confused at a PC. This book was part of my university course, where we learnt about operating systems. And some of the most interesting stuff that I did was actually trace through the source code of Minix, which is kind of a vague inspiration for Linux, and understand how parts of it works. I'm not going to just like rewrite this from scratch, because that'd be weird, but I might play with this and like poke around at the innards of how a PC works. So if you find that interesting and you're still here, then hit the subscribe button and all that rubbish, or just come back next time. But I'll see you later. Right, this book includes a CD-ROM. Hopefully there's a copy of that on archive.org, because I don't possess a CD drive. I've got this tiny little industrial PC. I figure combine the two. So, see you later.